Hello, it's morning here, so if you're watching this in the morning, good morning. I'm going to catch you up on a couple concepts that we didn't quite get to this week before the quiz. Um, so let's make sure that you have the concepts of average atomic mass, the Bohr model, and the quantum model. So the first thing to understand about average atomic mass is the numbers on the periodic table are the average atomic mass. So when you have a number, the box that talks about carbon, at the top is the atomic number of 6. But at the bottom it has this like rounded, it has this like decimal number of 12.01. This number down here is the average atomic mass. So the way to calculate the average atomic mass is to take all of the atoms of that element and get the average of the mass. So it's you think about averages more about the like adding them all together and then dividing by the number that there are, and that's similar to how you would do it. But at this point, we know about what percentage of each atom is which isotope. So there is a formula to calculate average atomic mass. When I did the penny demonstration yesterday, you can calculate how many of which isotope there are if you know the abundance and the mass of each isotope. So we're going to use a couple new terms. The word abundance is what percent of an element is a certain isotope. Okay, so this is a percentage. So when I give the formula for average atomic mass, when I use a percentage symbol, that's talking about the abundance. So hypothetically, if you had 3 different isotopes, you have isotope A and B and C. We can use the formula of average atomic mass. So this is average atomic mass. That's going to be equal to whatever the abundance of isotope A is times the mass of A, plus whatever the abundance of isotope B is times the mass of B, plus whatever the abundance of isotope C is times the mass of C. And if you had more isotopes than just 3, you would have to include like percent of D times the mass of D. So and so forth until you cover all of the isotopes. So this accounts for if you have a very heavy isotope, but there are very few of them, that will not affect the average as much as if you have a high abundance of isotopes that are close together. That's average atomic mass. The next concept to discuss is the Bohr model, which is one of the problems for people in understanding the electrons from here on. A study that was completed by a professor at Boston College demonstrated that students who learn the Bohr model do worse than not learning it at all. Many of you have already learned it though. So if we review what it says, the Bohr model says that electrons travel on these fixed orbitals. So these orbitals, or shells is what he called them, could hold certain numbers of electrons. And this model starts to break down. It can be useful, but it also is inhibitive of understanding how the electrons actually behave. So on the first shell, you could hold 2 electrons. And so Bohr said that atoms can exist here on this shell, or they can exist on this shell, but they can't exist in the space between. It's not possible. Well, now we know Schrodinger has described the electron not as a particle, not as energy, but as both. This is super confusing. It doesn't really make sense for us in the real world. We don't have anything at this large enough scale that matches what an electron or how a photon might behave. So in order for you to understand what this is, it is more closely described as energy. So electrons have mass, so they are matter. It's a thing, it's a particle. But almost every other quality of the electron is energy. So the electron can exist here because it has a low enough energy. You can add energy to it, and then all of a sudden it jumps to a higher energy level. Okay, so if you're familiar with the Bohr model, it can be helpful in thinking about how to make ions, how many electrons an atom might lose, but more important is the quantum model. So the quantum model says that we can't say where an electron is at any given time, but we can give an approximate address for it. So we can say where it is most probably located, but it's not possible to determine its certainty. All right, so the electron configuration has 4 qualities that help us describe its address. So I'm going to put this in quotes. Okay, so that word behind my name is address. Or behind my picture. Okay, so if you are looking at an atom and you want to describe where or how much energy an electron has, the first property is that we describe its principal energy level. Oops, principal. Okay, the second quality we can use is to describe its sublevel. So there are different sublevels within a principal energy level. The third property that describes where or how much energy an electron has is which orbital is it in. And then the last quality is called this magnetic spin. Okay, so we have different symbols to represent each of these qualities. So the principal energy level is given as a number. So does it have 1? Is it in the first energy level or the second or the third? It goes all the way up to 7. So the principal energy level is any number from 1 to 7. The sublevel we have 4 different labels. So there's 4 different types of sublevels. You have the S, P, D, or the F sublevel. So those are the 4 possible sublevels for electrons. The orbitals are described basically on which plane they exist. So do they exist on just the x-axis, the y-axis, or the z-axis? So x, y, or z. It gets a little more complicated with the higher you get, but for now, that's what we're going to do. And the 2 options for magnetic spin are either up or down. Okay, so those qualities can all really be demonstrated by this diagram. So if you think about the nucleus of an atom, as the center of the atom, the farther you get away from the nucleus, the higher the energy level. Okay, so this lowest energy level is principal energy level number 1. Okay, so this is the first energy level, and it is the first sublevel. If you have more, if you add energy, you jump up to a higher energy level. So now this is the second energy level. The second energy level has multiple sublevels. The first energy level has only one sublevel, but once you get to the second energy level, the atom is a little bigger and it expands. This is Connor. He's going to school in just a couple minutes. So the second energy level also has the P sublevel. So all three of these lines represent the P, the P sublevel, and each of these lines represents an orbital. So the first principal energy level has one sublevel. The second principal energy level has two sublevels. If you have filled up all of these sublevels, you can jump up to the third energy level. So the third energy level has three sublevels. It has the 3s, the 3p, and the 3d. Oh boy, I'm running out of space. You probably cannot do this. But all right, so it has the 3d, and the 3d has 5 orbitals. There, so this is the 3d. We can say which one. So like before, I could say like this was the x, and this is the y, and this is the z. But this is what I was talking about. The orbital like coordinate plane starts to like get really messy up here, and it's not quite as important anymore. One very unusual circumstance is that the first sublevel of the fourth principal energy level is lower in energy than the 3D sublevel. So you can see if we were to draw a line across, the 4s comes before the 3D. Okay, so far we have talked about the principal energy level, the sublevels of S, P, D, and F. These orbitals are these lines. And the last thing that describes an electron is which direction is its spin. Okay? So when we start filling in this little diagram, so this diagram is what helps us understand where or how electrons exist. In the first sublevel, electrons can have an upspin and a downspin. So those are the two options. This is my youngest son, who is about to become the middle child. This is Bennett. So the electrons can have an up or a downspin, and orbitals can hold 2 electrons. After 2 electrons, if you have more than 2 electrons in an atom, it continues to fill from lowest energy to highest energy. So this is the concept of orbital notation. These electrons are used to demonstrate where an electron basically lives. And this little model is going to help us a lot more than the Bohr model. Okay.
Thank you.
If you have any questions, go ahead and email me. Good luck on your quiz.